So welcome everyone to today's Teach Educational Round session. Our topic today is QuitNow, Men Reaching Men with Novel Web-Based Resources. And our faculty presenters today are Dr. John Oliffe, Dr. Gayl Sarbit, and Dr. Joan Bottorff. Now it is that time of year again that the Teach is developing the curriculum for the next set of Educational Rounds webinars, and we want to hear from you. So if you would like to let us know what type of topics you would like us to cover in the 2016-2017 year, please click on the link in the survey to complete our needs assessment. As well, the PDF version of the slides can be accessible here if you would like to fill out the survey later on. If you are interested in obtaining a letter of completion for today's round, you must have first registered for the webinar and completed the pre-learning assessment. You must sign in to view the live webinar session for the full hour using your first and last name. If you had attended today's webinar as a group, please be sure to email me by end of business day today with a list of attendee names. And then following the webinar, you will be sent a link to the evaluation and post-learning assessment. These webinars are being live tweeted on Twitter. Follow the CAMH Nicotine Dependent Service on Twitter at @PSQuitSmoking. To follow the live tweeting or to post your questions or comments using the following hashtag #TeachWebinar. Dr. John Oliffe is a presenter at the School of Nursing at the University of British Columbia, founder and lead investigator of UBC's Men's Health Research Program. His work focuses on masculinities as it influences men's health behaviors and illness management, and its impact on partners, families, and overall life quality. Findings drawn from his research offer guidance to clinicians and researchers to advance men's health promotion in the areas of psychosocial prostate cancer, smoking cessation, and male suicide prevention. An expat Australian, Dr. Oliffe has attracted more than $20 million in research funding and published over 170 peer-reviewed articles since being recruited to UBC in 2003. Our next presenter, Dr. Gayl Sarbit, is a knowledge broker with the Institute for Healthy Living and Chronic Disease Prevention at the University of British Columbia's Okanagan campus. I hope I said that right. With an extensive background in education, Gayl focuses on knowledge creation and translation to support the development of innovative and gender-sensitive tobacco reduction and cessation approaches. Our final presenter today, Dr. Joan Bottorff, is a professor in the School of Nursing and director of the Institute for Healthy Living and Chronic Disease Prevention at the University of British Columbia in Kelowna, BC. She is also a research fellow in the Faculty of Health Sciences at Australian Catholic University. Her research program focuses on health promotion and cancer prevention. Current projects focus on developing innovative, gender-sensitive approaches, including interventions designed specifically for men to promote smoking cessation. Our disclosures. There are no disclosures to report for the faculty presenters today. And the Teach curriculum and slides were developed and compiled with funding from the Government of Ontario, specifically Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care. Content of slides were primarily based on evidence-based guidelines from the following sources. These materials, as well as the verbal presentation and any discussions, set out only general principles and approaches to assessment and treatment and do not replace the need for individualized assessment. Now, before I hand it over to our presenters today, I just want to do a couple of polling questions just to get a sense of the group today. So the first question I'm going to ask is, what type of organization do you work for? Okay, so it looks like it's an almost even split between family health teams, hospitals, and public health units. Okay, and the next question is, what discipline do you belong to? just make this bigger. So it looks like the majority of our participants today are pharmacists, registered nurses, and or social worker, community health workers. And the last question is asking what region you are from. Okay, great. It looks like it's almost an even split between the Central East area, including Peterborough, Haliburton, Simcoe, Peel, and York, as well as the GTA. So thank you, everyone, for completing the poll and getting of the group today. And now I'm going to hand it over to our guest faculty today.
Great. Thanks a lot for your help this morning. Nice to be able to present to the folks in and around Toronto. That's really something. So thanks for the opportunity. Just to say that the research team that have been involved in this research and also the broader program of research looking at men smoking includes many people, and of course Gayl and Joan are the leads on this, and I help a little bit, but there's a bunch of other names there as well that that should be acknowledged as being great partners, especially on this project. We've had some international input from Maria Lowen with the video piece, and it was a neat project because we kind of worked with QuitNow and kind of an industry partner in that way. So it was a little bit different. So really pleased to be able to share some of the findings and the ongoing work that we're doing with you today. You know, typically when we talk about a problem, we try to dig down into the problem and understand it, you know, from an epidemiological point of view. And I think smoking is an interesting one. You know, when you look at the sex split between men and women and smoking, you know, you typically find that men smoke more cigarettes, and there are also more men smoking. And it's not to set it up as a competing kind of victim piece. It's more to suggest that, look, it's relational, but we know that there's more guys smoking, so perhaps if we could intervene with those guys, we could have a flow-on effect to help out, you know, women and children as well. So just to say that, you know, in Canada, it's currently around 18.4% of men who are smoking compared to 13.9% of women. And the highest prevalence is among, you know, young adult men from 25 to 34. But I think it's interesting too, you know, when you dig down and you look at the subcategories within men, you can kind of see some hot spots in terms of smoking. So, for example, men who have sex with men, 50% of them smoke. Men living with PTSD that might not necessarily even be a clinical sample, around 34 to 61% smoke. Blue-collar occupations, you can see around 43%. You know, so again, just trying to think about, you know, how you connect with different subgroups of men to try and you know, make a difference in terms of their quitting and reductions. For the longest time, you know, we've been doing gender work, and by that we mean that it's a kind of a multi-dimensional kind of construct. It's the idea about what it is to be a man, what it is to be a woman, and how we're influenced to perform in certain ways. So, you know, in a cultural aspect as well, you know, thinking about, you know, how smoking is in some parts of the country, it's quite common. In other parts, it's not. So, trying to think about how culture intersects with things like gender and also other social determinants of health, you know, things like socioeconomic status. So we've done a nice job over the years of looking at guys in a kind of nuanced way, and we often refer to masculinities in a plural kind of way, which is helpful. But when we do, we're really talking about not just gender, but all of those things that intersect with gender, like culture and socioeconomic status, as I mentioned, and place. We know for a long time too that guys are influenced by guys, and so learning how to be a certain way and certain practices is often learnt by the people who are around you, who you respect, and who kind of influence you. And I think there's really good examples of strength-based approaches where dads, for example, can influence their children in really positive ways, and we've also seen guys kind of grow up in smoking households where it might not have been really helpful for them in terms of they were more likely to grow up to be smokers. So just to say that the masculinities piece has really been about how we think about roles for men, and smoking being one of those situations where a guy can take it on as an identity. We talk to a lot of younger guys, and often it'll be quite embedded in their practices, what they ordinarily do, and it can be a kind of a hedonistic practice because guys can kind of smoke for themselves, and then we sort of, in some of our other work where we've worked with new dads, for example, we find that there can be a real change when they're becoming a dad. They start to think outside of themselves and think about protecting and providing. So again, in terms of identity, it can make a real difference. The other nod is to the plurality, as I mentioned, in masculinities, but also femininities. And so this idea that it's not in a vacuum. Gender tends to be constructed, between men and women, and between men and men, and women and women. So on it goes, but it's usually constructed in relation to other people's practices as well as your own. So smoking is an interesting one because it's always felt like big tobacco was a long way ahead of us with the Marlboro Man and the way they were selling cigarettes. They sort of had an inside running on some of that work and some of the ways that they could appeal to different guys in terms of promoting smoking. So as I mentioned, guys can certainly, incorporate smoking into their lives. Oftentimes they'll be with peers who are also smoking. But we also know that guys oftentimes are wanting to quit, but they sometimes are disenfranchised or disconnected from healthcare systems, unlikely to admit they've got a problem, and try to really kind of quit by trial and error. So again, it can be quite challenging to kind of work with guys, especially when we know that they have higher rates of tobacco use, and we're really trying to make a bit of an impact on them. When we looked at the literature and tried to see what had been done specifically for men, so we often refer to this as men-centered work, there was very, very little out there. So there's only a couple of studies that had really actually targeted men specifically. We know that the reasons that guys smoke can vary, but we know that when we're trying to talk to them about behaviour change, it's really important to try to bring them into a space where it's kind of strength-based, the strength to be smoke-free. So in working with guys, we felt very strongly that if we could develop some programs that could engage men, would be a good chance to help them reduce and quit smoking. There's a number of examples that are around as well in other contexts, and just to mention a couple here. The Power Play project is up in northern BC. It's a work-based program, and it's about healthy living, healthy eating and active living, and it's in male-dominated workplaces. So we've devised a program up there where there's a competition between workplaces to eat better, eat healthier, and also exercise more. And so it's really been an interesting program because it trades on masculine ideals around competitiveness, physical prowess to some level, and productivity. So it's kind of been a really interesting program in that way. The other one that's mentioned there is DIG. It's the Dads in Gear program, where we did a focus very much on smoking in the context of new dads, as I mentioned previously. And just to say, for the longest time, we'd looked at smoking in pregnancy and postpartum as being a women's health issue, but we know that it's so connected to the partner smoking as well, that we kind of targeted the guys in aiding them to quit and reduce. And that program is now in a face-to-face situation, as well as having some online resources on the DIG website. So again, working specifically with guys. And the bottom one there, where Better Starts Here, is a recent one launched in June, and it's about men's depression, and it offers men the opportunity to come into a web space. So they've got some anonymity, and they're able to do a self-assessment. They're able to see a bunch of videos that would orientate them to healthcare systems in terms of their own, potentially depressive symptoms. And that's been really well patronised as well. There's some 36,000 unique visitors over the last 6-8 months now since it's been launched. So again, we know that this work can make a real difference. That guys can come into spaces, community-based spaces, online spaces, to kind of to make some changes to some of their health practices. In the specific context of the one that we're talking about today, the smoke-free men, just to say that we did consultations with men. The program of research has always been very, very good at talking with guys who are going to be the end users or potential end users of any product that we come up with. And so those consultations were really about, their smoking, some of the challenges, but also looking at, the website, so that usability testing, to try and get a sense of what guys like and use and work towards, in an online forum, and some pilot testing, website revisions, and the eventual launch was in January of 2015. So just to say that within those consultations with the guys, you're kind of looking for insights into what might motivate them to quit, around health and illness. Money came up, certainly, and also family. So there's a long tradition of men doing health for other people, so they'll change a behaviour under the context or pretense that they'll be helping others. And so smoking's a great one for that, and so the guys often refer to that. Messaging-wise, I think overall the guys have been very, very clear that they want strength-based messages. There's a lot of stigma associated with smoking, and so to reinforce that really isn't what they're wanting. They're wanting a strength-based opportunity around the things that they can do to be better in terms of specific strategies and working their way toward, reductions and quits. And I think too, it was the idea of looking for content that wasn't, heavy on text and was interactive and gave some opportunity to kind of to work through some ideas and develop something of a personalised plan was very much something that the guys shared with us about what they would like. We often talk about masculine ideals, and we talk about them in terms of, self-reliance, autonomy, those sorts of things, competitiveness. And sometimes we tend to think that they're bad things, but in some ways, if you're able to appeal to some of those things that men do or are meant to be doing well, it can help them come into a space in terms of not giving up something so much, but trading on the good things that they do to make a change in their life. So things like self-control, competitiveness, connecting with other smoke-free peers and physical prowess, and the idea of extra cash were things that really kind of the guys talk to. So again, not trying to emasculate the guys in any way, but actually trade on some of the things they do well. So again, bringing the guys into the space and helping, getting some assistance with the design principles of the website, the look and feel, the ideas of what might work for the guys, was again, a consultation, a part of developing the web piece. We worked with a designer as well with the website, and they came back with a couple of very different ideas about how this website could look and feel. And one of the things with the one we eventually chose for the QuitNow Men website was a very plain, kind of black and white look that traded on this notion of choosing strategies and working towards, a reduction and quit. So very simple, but very graphically, engaging. At least we thought from our perspective. So it also, in terms of the interactivity, we tried to sort of bring the guys into a space where they would have some control. So trading on those ideas of autonomy and independence, that they would pick a quit date and work towards it and get a countdown towards that. And also, looking at what they'd said to us about, money and issues around money and the money being spent on cigarettes. So again, we put in a calculator, but we put it in a way that kind of helped the guys think about what they might get, by saving money. So, in this particular example, I'm thinking of a man cave and those sorts of things, and just playing to some of the masculine ideas around, having your own space and what a waste of money this is on tobacco and where else it could be used. So just playing to some of those ideas. And then the tactics and tool very much about trying to make your own decisions and working your way through, on those particular elements that you want to work with. So there was a whole bunch of strategies and ways that guys could work through with the different things that were online, and we'll go into that in a little bit more. The quizzes as well, a lot of guys, enjoyed those and come into the space and sort of answer a few questions and not some quizzes that would kind of push maybe their limits of what they knew around smoking and around quitting. So it was really kind of a good space for the guys to come into as well in terms of interactivity. You could see how you measured up with the other guys on the site as well, how they were going in terms of their results. So I'm going to hand it over just after this slide to Gayl. But just to say the interactive video piece was also something that was quite unique. We worked with Maria Lowen from over in Ireland, and she'd done some interactive video with men who were experiencing an unexpected pregnancy and trying to make a decision about, what they would do in terms of moving forward, so with potential changes to their lives. And so we took some of the essence of what Maria had done with this interactive video piece and applied it to the context of smoking.
And we
so
really
really interesting.
have them identify
part of the reason is we know the guys are pretty good with testimonials.
Interactive video dramas
another guy can influence a guy quite a lot, and so if we could find a character and develop a character and kind of work with that vignette to bring guys into a situation that they deeply aligned with, and therefore then their strategies they could choose on their way through. So it just promoted a kind of a simulation, I guess, and an opportunity for the guys to kind of work with an online vignette to sort of make some decisions about their quit. So I'll hand it over now to Gayl on this slide.
We recognized that the IBDs were a really important way to engage men in thinking about quitting smoking, because we could use these natural settings and realistic events. We could encourage this positive identification with the main character, and we could support, as John said, the men's desire to make their own decisions. And so the content for the script was developed from the consultation sessions with men who smoke. And there was also agreement in the literature that strengthening men's self-efficacy is an important component in supporting smoking cessation. And also, there's research that identifies the value of pre-experiencing an event to properly prepare for it. Yes. Okay. So the goal of the IBDs, again, I think we've given you a little bit of that, but was to strengthen men's ability and their confidence to quit smoking by prompting reflection on smoking triggers, by preparing these high-risk situations for relapse, preparing for them before they happen, modeling some skills they can use in their daily lives to maximize a successful quit, and to identify with the experiences of the main character. The role of Nick was performed by a professional actor. We had criteria that was developed by the research team, and we were looking at someone between the ages of 25 to 35, which we felt was our main target audience. We wanted someone who was genuine and could be very personable on camera, a strong male voice with a good range of emotions. So the one main character was an actor, but anyone else you see in the videos are volunteers. We filmed 7 scenarios, and each scenario runs about 1 minute. And preferably, the men watch the videos sequentially, but if they choose not to, they can choose from any of these scenarios, and they can watch them independent of the other ones. So the first video shows Nick at home. He's just waking up in the morning, and he tells us that he's quitting smoking today, that he's tried many times in the past, and he wants us, the viewers, to understand the experience through his eyes. And we're going to show you this first video now.
Hi, Gayl. It appears that you no longer have audio. I believe Joan got kicked out. I'm not sure what happened. Are you able to activate the audio on your computer? Yeah, you can connect your audio through your webcam. Gayl, can you hear me at all through the phone?
Okay, you can talk again. I don't know what happened.
Can everybody hear me now? Can someone chat to say whether they can hear me? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm right.
The technology is not perfect, and we're still trying to incorporate ways that we can show videos through these Adobe Connect webinars. The only thing is, I understand you couldn't hear the video, but you could see it. So I encourage you to go to the QuitNowMen.ca website, and right from the home page, you can watch all the Nick videos. So as soon as we get our slides back up here, we after each of the scenarios, we have two different questions that prompt men to reflect on what they've seen and then respond to the questions. And the first question is, if I were Nick, how would I feel on the first day of a quit? And the second question is, if I were Nick, what tactic would I choose? And we've set these up as polling questions for you to respond to, so you see how, oh, there they are on the right-hand side of my screen anyway. So if the first question, if I were Nick, there it is in the middle, how would I feel on the first day of a quit? And I can see that most of you have typed in, I'm really worried about being able to do this. Is that, oh, and here we're getting a few more responses to that. And we're also looking at, so the options are, I feel confident, I know what I need to do, and I know how to do it. I'm prepared. I've tried to quit before, but I'm ready now. I'm really worried about being able to do this. I'm hesitant. I've made the decision to quit, but, and yeah, so those are the options for men to choose. And we can bring up the next question now. The next question is, if I were Nick, what tactic would I choose? So would I choose to go cold turkey? Would I use the patches and the gum, nicotine replacement therapy? Would I ask a doctor about prescription medication? Talk to a quit coach and call this number? Check out the QuitNow.ca website or ask a buddy for support. So you can see just from your own responses that there's a variety of tactics that you are choosing, and the men do the same thing. But the beauty of having these questions like this is that once they lock in their response, they can see how other guys have responded to these questions as well. And we know from our research that, and John mentioned it already, that guys listen to guys, and so this is an important piece. None of these, all of these questions are correct. So whatever they choose, it's not wrong, but we're trying to get at the men often have difficulty in expressing their feelings, and so we're opening up this discussion to see if we can get at how they feel and then what their decision would be in moving forward. So thank you for the polling questions. And I think we can, so that's how they look on the website, and it doesn't show on this screen how they would see how other people have answered, but if you go onto the website, you'll be able to see that. So IBDs are an exciting new approach to support men's smoking cessation. We think these are the first time in the world, and we know actually that they've never been done before. And they combine the emotional, social, cognitive, and behavioral aspects of quitting. So they really combine everything. A well-developed IVD can incorporate the principles of men's health promotion. They can include multiple features that appeal to men. They can create characters that influence men's beliefs about quitting. And they can convey valuable quit smoking tactics in an instructive yet empowering way. So we think that when men gain this new information and believe that they are skilled enough to apply it successfully, that they're more likely to try and to succeed in quitting smoking. I'm going to now pass the presentation over to Dr. Bottorff, and she's going to explain the results, what our findings have been. Thank you.
Great, thanks everyone. So now that we had this, what we thought was a great website resource tailored for men, the question that we were all asking is, does it work? Will men actually use it, and will they benefit from its use? So we launched a pilot test of the QuitNow website and invited men to try it out, and did some follow-up testing at 3 and 6 months. And I'll tell you a little bit about that now. So we had 117 men participate in this pilot. We recruited them using social media from actually across the country. The mean age was 38. Although the website was designed for a target audience of about between 18 and 45, we didn't limit the pilot study to that age group. We wanted to see if this was something that older men might be interested in as well, and there were some older men in this group. As you can see, most of the men had smoked for over 20 years, and they were all, the baseline cigarettes per day on average was about 14. We also looked at their dependence, and as you can see, for this sample, it's kind of half and half between minimally dependent and either moderately or highly dependent. So at 6 months, and although there were 117 men in the study, 67 completed all of the surveys. And so we looked at their website usage over the 6 months that they had access to it. And delighted to see that over 95% of the sample used the website at least once. And as you can see by this slide, actually men were using it quite frequently. Were they satisfied with the website? And in fact, we're delighted with this. Over 70% were satisfied with the website. We also learned that about 80% either strongly agreed or agreed that it was easy to use. About 2/3 thought the design and images were appealing. Again, about 2/3 intended to use the website again and continue to use it. And over 70% thought they would recommend it to other men who wanted to quit. So this was all great news for us and making us feel like we might be on the right track. Here is a fairly detailed graph, but what you can see here is a list of some of the main website tools on QuitNow Men and whether men actually use them. And you can see that one of the most popular tools was Tactics for Getting Started to Quit, as well as Tactics for Surviving the Quit Date, which is perhaps not too surprising those would be very, very popular tools. The quit line you can see at the bottom, we did include information about how to connect with an expert and how to talk to a quit coach. Less frequently used, but perhaps not too surprising because it would require men reaching out in a slightly different way. We also asked men about how helpful they found the tools that they use. And you can see here in terms of somewhat helpful or very helpful, we get pretty strong endorsement by the men who use these tools across the whole range of resources that were included on the website. Interestingly, we were also very curious about how our pilot study participants would respond to the IVD videos if I were Nick, because this was a sort of new approach that we were trying out. So we looked at the 117 men that began the pilot. Of those, 75 completed the follow-up survey. And in that group, 47 men completed or viewed at least one IVD. Interestingly, 40% viewed all 7. So that was encouraging. So we looked at the feedback of those 47 men about the videos. And in terms of whether Nick was someone they could relate to, you can see that really by the purple and lime green, which were agree and strongly disagree, well over half the sample thought that Nick was someone they could relate to. The responses to the IVD video, again, we are very pleased with this. So the agree and strongly agree are the last 2 bars on each of these diagrams here in this chart. So again, pretty good endorsement about the videos encouraging men to think about issues they hadn't thought about before, to think about how they need to change their smoking routines, men suggesting that it helped them prepare ahead for situations, and finally that the video helped men realize that they could be as strong as Nick in staying quit. So again, building that self-efficacy. Nick apparently for most men was a good role model in terms of quitting. When we look at quit attempts over the 6 months that men were exposed to the website, we see that over 60% or 60 men of the 67 who completed the surveys had quit at least once for 24 hours or longer. Only 7 men did not actually make a quit attempt. And when we look at smoking status at the 6-month follow-up, we see that 24% were abstinent and 40% had reduced, whereas 36% there was no change. And so among those men who had no change or reduced, We looked at whether they made quit attempts or not, and we can see that the majority had made a quit attempt. So that was also encouraging. When we look at the use of the website resources in relation to smoking patterns, we find, perhaps not too surprisingly, that men who reduced smoking were more likely to have used more website resources than those men who had no change in smoking behavior. So, and also we looked at confidence to quit among the smokers at 6 months. So those who had reduced or had not made a quit attempt, looking at them, and you can, as you can see here, they were either somewhat confident or very confident that they could still make a quit attempt. So as Joan mentioned at the beginning, this QuitNow, based on these results, we were very encouraged. And so we launched the QuitNow men's website in January 2017 to take advantage of men's New Year's resolutions. And we targeted northern British Columbia because that's where the smoking rates were highest. This is where we did a lot of advertising. And we also held a contest. And this is some of the advertising we used for that contest to remain smoke-free during the first month of February. And we had a great uptake to the website during this period. And it was really an effective mechanism for introducing the website and beginning to engage men in using this site. The site now is part of the QuitNow menu of resources on their main site and can be accessed by anyone. So I would encourage you to go and have a look at the QuitNow men website, explore it in detail, and perhaps have another look at some of those IVDs. We have pulled together all of the work that we've done on men's smoking cessation into a brand new Smoke Free Men website that has just been released. And here you can learn about some of our work, not only with QuitNow Men, but with Dads in Gear as well. So I encourage you to also go and have a look at this website if you're interested in learning more about this approach of tailoring smoking cessation approaches, particularly to men. So we think that this approach has got some real potential to reach out to men in new ways, to engage them when our other approaches may not have been as effective or might not have had the uptake from men that we would have hoped for. And so I would encourage you to think about your own work with men who smoke and how we all might be able to make those approaches more gender sensitive and perhaps sex specific in terms of what we offer to men. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention. We've listed our websites where you can find more information about our work, as well as the publications that are have already been done in relation to this work. And of course, we have our Twitter feeds there too, and we'd love to have you follow us on Twitter. So with that, I might stop and invite any questions or comments from anyone in the audience to either John, Gayl, or myself. So thank you very much for your attention. So I see a question from Michael. Is there a similar study or program for women? And I guess my answer to that would be, you know, we've focused on women's smoking cessation quite a lot. In particular, where the best examples are tailored programs for pregnant women to support their smoking cessation using a women-centered approach. And some of the work that I've done with Lorraine Greaves and Nancy Poole in that area are great examples. So
Great, thank you, everyone.
that's probably where you'll see the best. There have been some programs as well developed for low-income women that are also sort of women-centered.
Unmute your line. As well, if you are joining us via the computer, you can simply
And yes,
type your
Pregnets
question
is
into
another
the chat
one.
box.
Absolutely. Thanks for suggesting that. So there's lots, actually quite a lot of programs that have been designed for women. And as John mentioned, we don't see the same focus on developing what we might call men-friendly programs or men-centered programs for men, or even any subgroups of men. And so it does raise the question about, you know, why that is, and what greater impact we might have if we could begin to make more efforts to tailor programs for various subgroups, particularly when we can integrate some of the gender-related factors that we know are influencing smoking patterns and smoking cessation.
You're very welcome, Paul.
John, do you want to answer that question? Do you know if there's any research connections between alcohol, tobacco use and males? And I think I might just add to that, John, that one of our IVDs, one of the scenarios, presents the high-risk situation of Nick going to the bar after work for a drink with his friends, and showing how he was able to do that and still be smoke-free. So if people are interested, they might have a look at that particular IVD scenario.
So I haven't seen anything specifically, you know, that suggests that, but I know that, you know, in our consultations with the guys who are smoking, you know, many of them talked about a trigger for their smoking being when they're having a drink. So you know, linking it to kind of relaxation and reward. So I'm sure that there would be something out there in terms of empirical evidence that would show an association. And I guess it might beg the question about whether you're wanting to intervene on one substance or polysubstance. And again, I'd have to defer to the literature there. I think the smoking work has been very, very focused purely on the smoking, but it's not to say that there might not be other avenues to think about how certain addictions, for want of a better term, might be clustered.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
everyone for coming.
Thank you.